As Caligula said, you must live either modestly or like Caesar. We've all lived modestly, so it's time to experience the life of a Caesar, at least through video. In the next couple of minutes, we're going to dive into a day in the life of a real Roman emperor. True, many of the details may not be as lavish, for Caligula didn't fully realize that being a Roman ruler isn't just about orgy boats. It is also hard work, and to understand this, we'll follow Mr. Augustus Amadeus. It is 298 BC, and our Amadeus, as an emperor, does not rest in a brothel with concubines from Africa. Caligula did just that, but such emperors did not live long and went down in history as crazy losers. Our Augustus is a good emperor, and unfortunately, that is why instead of a palace, he lives in a tent near Alexandria. The reason is simple. The Egyptians, led by the traitor Achilles, have revolted and refused to be part of the empire. The revolt has been going on for 8 months, but it is coming to its logical conclusion. Our emperor's loyal praetorians and legions are besieging Alexandria, and it is about to fall. Unfortunately, such rebellions are not exceptions, but a commonplace for a good Roman emperor. Not everyone was present with their troops personally, but it was necessary to pacify the discontented regions. Our Amadeus, before Egypt, pacified the revolt of the Moors in Africa, and before that, defended the frontier of the empire on the Danube from numerous tribes of barbarians, and the torment will not end at Alexandria. There is already news that the tribes are attacking the southern borders of Egypt as well. Rome's borders are sacred, and our Augustus will have to go there to deal with his neighbors, taxing them with tribute. Of course, he can send his subordinates to do it. By this time, Rome was divided into 4 large regions, but the trouble is that all the military commanders and local lesser emperors faced exactly the same problems. The Britons, Gauls, Germans, and even the Spanish were rebelling. Our Amadeus, being a clever ruler, had long ago divided Rome into 4 huge tetrarchies. He took one for himself and put mini emperors in the rest, thus eliminating the main problem of sluggishness and size of the empire. Now Rome is much more mobile, and each of the parts deals with internal problems and border defense independently. Emperor Constantine deals with Britain, Maximilian makes noise in Spain and Italy, Galerius took over Germany, but our Amadeus solves the issues of the East and Egypt. Sometimes military power is not enough. For example, in the conflict with the ruler of Armenia, Tiridates, 2 Caesars with troops took part at once. However, the mind of our Augustus is not filled with gold and parties. Military problems in Rome have always been plentiful, and if you do not respond to them, you can lose part of the territory or even your head, as rivals and conspirators are always on guard. This is the second problem that our Augustus thinks about all the time. In 500 years, of the 82 emperors, 1 in 5 has been assassinated. Commodus was killed by his mistress through a bribed slave. The Praetorians buried 5 rulers at once, and everyone probably knows the story of Caesar. So in addition to suppressing rebellions, Amadeus must keep his finger on the pulse of events at all times. First, as you may have learned from our clip of the Praetorians, this required paying the guards well. Secondly, he must be on good terms with the Praetorian prefect, who could simply slaughter the emperor and appoint someone else. And thirdly, he must keep an eye on his comrades, each of whom could turn out to be a traitor. Our Amadeus is a good emperor and solved the problem gracefully. Unlike most emperors, Amadeus did not remove past officials, even though many of them were involved in treason. This decision earned him the loyalty of his subjects, who were famously surprised by such a move. Secondly, our Augustus married his daughter to the prefect of the guard, putting a stop to rebellions. Thirdly, Amadeus is a former military man himself, so he commands total respect in these circles. This is, by the way, a frequent occurrence in Rome. Emperors who came from the army were almost always successful, and their power is firm, regardless of their origin. Our Augustus is the grandson of a slave and began his service as a simple soldier. Ancient Rome was truly a place of opportunity, where people with talent could become anything, but they had no time to rest on their laurels because, in addition to rebellions and betrayals, our Augustus, even during distant campaigns, had to think about something else: the economy. Money directly influenced the length of reign and the life of emperors. Caligula was assassinated just after the guy skipped out on his inheritance and imposed insane taxes. By the year 298, the Roman Empire was huge, and ruling it was challenging. However, our Augustus was a good emperor and acted as cunningly as possible. He was the first in the history of Rome to introduce a progressive taxation system. If you cultivate a lot of land and make a lot of money, pay more. If you make ends meet, no problem. The tax office won't bother you. Amazingly, the system worked, and more money flowed into the treasury without causing unnecessary riots just because the rich were bound by the division of the empire. It used to be possible to riot in Gaul while the emperor was at war with Persia. Now you will be quickly met by the local mini Caesar and explained how disobedience to Rome is dealt with.
This video is brought to you by Thorum. Take a look at these rings. They have rings made from 4 billion-year-old Gibeon meteorite and genuine 65 million-year-old T-Rex bone. If you are a fan of Vikings, they have Odin ring, the Norse god of war, the Thor ring, and all of them are crafted by hand. Head the link in the comments and use promo code LIVINGHISTORY to get 20% off a truly unique ring.
Speaking of Rome, even during the lull month, our Amadeus doesn't live there. Emperors didn't always reside in the capital. Often they chose quieter towns. Augustus settled in Nicomedia, which is now located in Turkey and known as Izmir. By doing so, emperors revitalized other parts of the empire, greatly reducing the degree of discontent. After all, if you have an emperor living in your city, you have a reason to be proud, don't you think? And the probability of getting stabbed 18 times on the way to the Colosseum, as it happened to Domitian, becomes much less. Moreover, the comfort of the emperor did not depend on being in Rome, as he finally came to opportunities rather than heavy duties, and they were virtually endless for the rulers. In the year 238, a proconsul Guardian built a huge Colosseum in Tunisia just because he wanted to have fun. It stands to this day being the second largest preserved Colosseum after the Roman. As we mentioned earlier, Caligula built huge orgy boats framed in gold. Benito Mussolini even ordered the draining of lakes to find them. Italians even found a couple of boats and hid their rich jewelry in the museum. However, in 1944, they were trashed. But that's another story. Our Amadeus could literally do anything. One of the balding emperors of Rome issued a law forbidding anyone to look down on him or to be taller. Good old Caligula gave his horse the title of consul. Vespasian demolished Solomon's temple and drove the Jews out of Jerusalem with one edict. Carneus raped the wives of his soldiers, and Nero dreamed of being an opera singer and forced citizens into the theater, forbidding them to leave until the end of his performances. Actions depended only on the intelligence and degree of insanity of the emperor. Our Augustus, as we mentioned, is a good guy, so he uses all his power for good. For example, he built a huge defense line of fortresses on the Danube and Rhine. They are still considered great constructions, and many historians believe that the network of fortifications gave Rome extra years under the pressure of the Germans. Also, emperors loved to influence people's heads. Many destroyed the records of historians, rewriting them in their own way. Some changed the names of gods, and absolutely everyone minted coins with the faces of their favorites. But our Augustus stands out because his obsession was religion. Amadeus, like most Romans, practiced traditionalism and hated Christianity. However, other pagans and Jews also had their share, and Islam was saved only by the fact that it had not been founded yet. Augustus spared no one in this matter. Churches were burned, priests were hanged, and whole regions were forcibly converted to the religion of Rome. Sadly, it's not an exaggeration. Emperors, as well as citizens, treated religion strictly and fought hard against non-believers, until Constantine, who, as you remember from past videos, eventually made Christianity the religion of Rome. Our Augustus would probably roll over in his grave. And for the sweetest part, let's go over the stereotypes. Yes, every second emperor of Rome had his head blown off by the power, and they engaged in all sorts of hard stuff. But we should not forget that the sacred task of the majority of them was to defile their predecessor as much as possible, and at the same time, make edits in the textbook so that it was he who looked like the father of the empire and the best ruler in history. That is why almost all sources should not be trusted. You can only trust the facts, and they are that neither the mad Caligula nor the transvestite Elagabalus had any effect on the total domination of Rome. Legendary roads were built that still stand to this day. Armies trampled country after country, and it was only Rome itself that was perverse and frivolous. The rest of the empire was a machine unparalleled in history. The influence the President of the United States has is a pittance compared to what the Roman emperors could do. Our Augustus Amadeus, as many might have guessed, is based on Emperor Diocletian. He was indeed the grandson of a slave, and the stories about the social elevator in ancient Rome do not lie. There were emperors of Arabs, blacks, and all classes. Well, and Diocletian stands out even against the background of legendary Caesars of the past for having come in during a time torn by civil wars in Rome. He spent 20 years in power and managed to end all crises, laying the foundation for a reliable future for several generations. Many historians argue with this statement and believe that Diocletian simply ruled the textbooks, engaging in propaganda, but the facts are still facts. Under him, Rome was divided into 4 parts. There was a progressive tax system, and the territory not only did not decrease, but also increased. The guy is an exception, for he managed to retire and live a quiet old age on his farm. If each of the emperors had been like Diocletian, we might well still be living in the Roman Empire today. See you again, folks.